It is time now for Money Power Politics. The Trump administration continues to sink its claws into big business, and they are using our taxpayer dollars to do it. According to the New York Times, the administration has committed more than $10 billion to snatch up ownership shares of many private companies. At least 9 of those companies are involved in steel, minerals, nuclear energy, and semiconductors. And the deals were all struck within the last 6 months alone. Charlotte Howard joins us, executive editor and New York bureau chief for The Economist, and financial journalist Brendan Greeley. His book, The Almighty Dollar, comes out next year. Charlotte, the Trump administration seems to think that these investments are necessary for national security, for reducing our reliance on other countries like China, for critical resources. But is the government buying ownership stakes in private companies the way to do it? Because if these shares suddenly go south, that's on us. We're the taxpayers.
So this is a phenomenon that's not new, this concern over dependence on foreign countries, particularly China, on
And it's a legitimate concern.
It's a legitimate concern. I used to be our energy and commodities editor at The Economist, and I covered this, 5 years ago about how China had really shored up its control, particularly of rare earths, but other parts of the of key supply chains. And what's interesting is that Donald Trump, in trying to make America great again, is in many ways mimicking the strategy of China, actually, by being much more interventionist in the private sector. And this is not the only way that one could counter China's dominance in these supply chains. So, for instance, you could sign trade deals with allies, which might be a cheaper way to get access to the really essential goods that the United States needs. But Donald Trump is interested in doing this within America's borders in a very interventionist and expensive way.
Okay, but Brendan, let's say there's a key contract up for bidding and the government has to choose between multiple companies. And one of these companies, let's say the government has a big fat ownership stake in. Should we be confident that they're going to pick the best company? Like, doesn't this warp the way free markets works?
Yeah, I don't know how we can be confident, Steph. The problem is we got through the entire Cold War without an open equity stake in Northrop Grumman, and this is a shift. The challenge is it's not just that they're buying equity stakes in some of these companies; they're also just demanding them and getting them for nothing in return. And so it seems like it's being described as an issue of national defense, of shoring up companies that are strategically important. But the way we're doing it ensures also maximum control from the White House. So if you can control equity stakes, and that means you can also get companies to do things for you. The problem is a complete lack of transparency about why we made this decision, what the plan is, and who at the White House is making these decisions.
Can we just think for a minute, though, because it's not just the government. If you go back to August, the Commerce Department became the largest shareholder in Intel. Shortly after, the government of ethics shows that the president himself, he personally purchased between $1 and $5 million of Intel's corporate debt. How is that not an enormous scandal, controversy, story, concern for the American people or for Congress?
Well, I think there are 2 things going on. One, as you rightly identify, is this blurring where you're not sure whether the president is representing the interests of the American people or he's representing his own financial interests. And what he's done very skillfully, I think, over time is dull the reaction, get everyone used to the idea that this is just what presidents do and what this president in particular does. And so you see it not just in the stakes that he's taken, but also, across the ways in which the Trump family organization is benefiting from various policies out of this administration. You look at crypto, some of the property deals that the Trump organization is advancing abroad. It's this consistent muddying of the interests, again, of taxpayers and the Trump family that kind of dulls the reaction. And so Trump continues to push on this open door because everyone gets used to it.
And who would be the people pushing back? Would it be Congress? Would it be corporate America?
I think Well, corporate America views it in their short-term self-interest, right, to not put a target on their back. I mean, I talked to CEO after CEO who say it's their fiduciary duty to go, cap in hand to the White House and try to advance the interests of their shareholders. So I think it really does come down to voters. It comes down to voters in next year's midterm elections. It comes down to, voters in a few years' time when the White House is again up for grabs. But I think that you're right that the lack of reaction across American life, whether it's voters so far at least, or companies themselves, is quite something.
Okay, Brendan, new topic. The victims of the October 7th massacre are now suing Binance and its founder, CZ, the man who Donald Trump pardoned just a few minutes ago. They claim that the platform Binance enabled over $1 billion in transactions for terrorist groups. Again, this is the man that Donald Trump pardoned 3 weeks ago. The week after that, Binance was then marketing Trump's crypto business. What do you make of this?
So if you remember, there was a time about a year ago when Trump seemed to make clear that he didn't think crypto was real money. That's obviously changed. And so we have to figure out, what is it that he sees of interest in this? The dream of crypto. There was this libertarian dream that crypto could be money without any kind of middlemen. The problem with that is, there's a long list of problems with that, but the main problem with that is we have to remember sort of what it is that middlemen do and what it is that they do that is of value to us. Part of that is just the basic thing that we have asked of banks. Know your customer. Give us your data so that we can understand what's happening, so that we can prevent money laundering, so that we can prevent capital flight, so that we can prevent all of these things that is actually in the legitimate interest of a democracy to prevent. And so it seems as if it's not just Binance that's getting this treatment. There are other crypto owners or rather crypto company CEOs who were in jail, had been convicted for various abuses, who have been pardoned by Donald Trump. And the message he seems to be sending is, I am interested in the things that crypto firms can do under cover of darkness.
Charlotte, you recently wrote about a topic that I think is hugely important and foreign to a lot of people, the rise of insider capitalism in the second Trump administration. Explain.
So my colleagues at The Economist did, I thought, a great cover package a week or two ago that outlined the changes within American business that are taking place, not necessarily because the laws are changing, but that Trump is changing the rules of the game. And there are a few different... Unofficially. But there's a real impact, right? I mean, we've heard one already, the interventions in the private sector in terms of the government taking stakes. You also, of course, have Trump, looking to the heads of very big companies to pledge fealty to him, whether it's the donations to the corporate ballroom or any number of private meetings that executives are seeking to try to advance their own interests. You have this blurring of the lines between the public interest and the president's personal interest. There are different dimensions in which this is playing out. But together, they represent something that is really new in American capitalism and anathema, I would argue, to what we've had before.
The American people might be willing to look the other way or not pay attention if they, too, were thriving. But is this not going to pose an enormous political risk for this administration if people in this country are struggling economically while they are, and this insiders capitalism bonanza goes on?
So I think there's something really interesting going on, which is Trump is pushing the boundaries of how far he can get by just being shameless about it, because there's a charm in his authenticity. People think Washington was always corrupt. Trump is just doing this in a way that's more open, right? I think
that's really what we've heard from his own people.
So I think that what we see now is, I'm not sure the American people are going to buy that for much longer, particularly when economic performance falters. So you've seen, if you look across Trump's net approval ratings, the biggest drop from January to today is in his handling of the economy. And I think that what you've seen, just in recent months is the degree to which the broader performance of the S&P has been driven by AI. And there's a question now, right? Will that bubble pop? And will there be employment effects as AI starts to incent
If the AI
companies?
bubble pops, if it wipes out jobs, as these companies are donating tens of millions of dollars to his 90,000 square foot ballroom, what will the American voter say? I'm going to guess nothing good.